Hello, Tube. I have sound. I am on the screen. So, for about the next hour, I'll be working on this Harvard CS50 Python course. A few things. So this course is licensed under a Creative Commons, this attribution right here. You are free to share, copy, and redistribute the material in any medium or format. So I'm reading this as I can do what I'm about ready to do. Because of this very generous license. And then I can adapt, remix, transform, and build upon the material. I ain't building upon much, let's be real. I'm taking this to learn. And I'm just kind of documenting my process. And I hope that other people who are taking the course will stop by and say hi and let me know how they're doing and so on and so forth. Attribution, you must give appropriate credit in the description below. Let me make sure it's in here. Just to double check. Yes, so I have a link to the course down below. It's completely free. It's through edX. You can sign up today and do it along with me. You do it at your own pace and all that fun stuff. I also have a link to the license in the description down below too. And then when I'm done with the stream, I'll try to remember to pin it as well as a comment. Provide a link to the license, which I did, and indicate if any changes were made. You're going to see, I'm just going to work through the material. You may do so in any reasonable manner, but not in any way that suggests the licensor endorses you or your use. So I'm not affiliated with edX. They don't know I exist. Besides, I enrolled in the class. Non-commercial. You may not use this material for commercial purposes. I don't have... my channel is not monetized. I do not have any links to tip jars or anything within this stream, so we're good there. And share alike. If you remix, transform, or build upon the material, you must distribute your contributions under the same license as the original. I think YouTube has licensing, but I'm not going to copyright strike anybody. If for some reason you want to, show how poorly I do in this class, feel free. It's all good. No additional restrictions. You may apply legal terms or technological measures. Okay, Piggy. That legally restrict others from doing anything the license permits. I don't care. You can do whatever you want. So that goes for any of my live streams. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. So that's out of the way. This is the first lecture. The first lecture is an hour and 45 minutes. It's 8 o'clock. It's already past my bedtime, to be honest. I usually like to be in bed by now. But time is precious. We'll probably do this until 9-ish. We'll see how far we get. And also, I'm going to try to do it tomorrow. I have the kids Wednesday and Thursday this week. They may not allow me to stream. I don't know. But if I can, I plan on doing as much as I can every night until it's finished. Next week's a little easier. I'm on vacation. The dog is just making all sorts of noises. So, let's get to it. Let's see how long I can stay awake for. It's probably a loud. Here in a second, I'm going to pause it just to make sure I'm not blowing out people's eardrums here. Alright, I won't pause it. Oh, I have my volume all the way down. Here in a second, I'm going to pause it just to make sure. Okay, that's good enough. Functions and variables. Here we go.
All right, this is CS50's Introduction to Programming with Python. My name is David Malin, and this is our week on functions and variables. But odds are many of you...
I don't remember. I don't remember the terms functions and variables. Maybe I should say real quick. I am a student at Southern New Hampshire University. I did take an intro to scripting, which was Python based. But that was like 2 years ago. And then, I was going to say something else, but, and the ITF Plus certificate, which I have, you won't be able to see it probably, but, does cover a little bit of scripting, but not a whole lot. So a lot of these terms and things I haven't seen for at least a year, probably a couple of years. So let's see if I can remember anything.
Most of you have never actually programmed before, so let's start by doing just that. Let me go ahead here and open up my computer, and on it a program called Visual Studio Code, or VS Code, which is just a very popular program nowadays for actually writing code. Now, you don't have to write code using this particular tool. In fact, all we need at the end of the day is a so-called text editor, a program...
Which I do have PyCharm, but... maybe I'll wait until I'm actually doing some of this work, because I think I'll probably do it through WSL and a Linux distro of some sort. So I'll probably just do the Visual, what do you call it, Visual Studio or whatever, through it.
Writing text, and heck, if you really want, you could even use something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word. You'd have to save it in the right format, but really, at the end of the day, all you need is a program for writing text, because that's what code is, text. Now, within this particular program, I'm going to have the ability to create one or more files via this top portion of the screen. And I'm going to do so by diving right in and doing this at the bottom of my screen. At the bottom of my screen is a so-called terminal window, and this is a command line interface, or CLI, interface to the underlying computer, be it your Mac or your PC or even some server in the cloud. And what I'm going to do here is literally write code and then the name of the file that I want to code, for instance, hello.py. As we'll soon see, any program that you write in Python generally has a file name that ends in .py to indicate to the computer that it's indeed a program written in Python. Now you'll see here at the top of my screen, I have a blinking cursor, a line 1, which is where the very first line of my code is going to go, and then just a tab that reminds me of the name of this file, hello.py. And without even knowing much Python, I'm going to write my very first program here as follows. Print, open parenthesis, quote, hello, comma, world, close quote, and close parenthesis. And you'll see that at my keyboard, some of my thoughts were finished for me. I only had to type one parenthesis and the other one automatically appeared. And that's just a feature that we'll see of tools like this tool here.
I also know there's like plugins. I'm not sure if this one has it, but there's plugins you can do too that kind of clean up to make the code pretty. Because a lot of us, especially those that don't do, or even a lot of really good programmers that just kind of feel like being lazy. They can write ugly code, they call it, and there's plugins that will make it pretty code.
Now, even if you've never programmed before, odds are you can guess, infer what this simple program is going to do, and it's
going to print hello world.
Open parenthesis, quote, hello world,
piece of cake,
close quote, close parenthesis. Indeed, when I run this program, ultimately, it's just going to say hello to the world. And in fact, this is a very famous, perhaps the most canonical program that you can write as your very first program in Python or any other language, and so that's what I've done here. But on my Mac, my PC, even my phone, I'm generally in the habit, like you, of running programs by double-clicking an icon or just tapping on the screen. But I see no such icons here, and in fact, that's because my interface to at least my current Mac or PC or some server in the cloud is, again, only a CLI, command line interface, which even though it might feel like it's a step back from the menus and buttons and icons that you and I take for granted every day, you'll find we think that it's ultimately a much more powerful interface and incredibly popular to use among programmers in the real world. So to run this program, I'm going to have to use a command. And I'm going to move my cursor back down to the bottom of the screen here, where previously I already ran one command. The command code, which has the effect of opening VS Code in my computer. And then
Alright, hold on a second. I gotta follow along. I feel the need. There it is. I was gonna say, where is it? Let me hide this for a second, just in case I have to log in or something. Bear with me. I've never used Visual Studio, so... Okay. So, let's do this. Perfect. So, mine looks different. Let's go. Just build a new folder. Huh. So what does his look so much cleaner than mine? Did that do anything? Oh, it has Copilot attached to it. Okay. Alright, let's try this real quick. Hello, world. Okay, so mine already has like this is more like, what is it called, an IDE? Ooh, what did I just click on? Okay.
Passed in the name of the file that I wanted to code up. Now I have a chance to type a second command, and you'll see I see a second $sign. Now the $sign here doesn't indicate any kind of currency or money. It just is the symbol that's generally used to indicate your prompt, where the command line interface wants you to put those commands. Now the command I can run here is going to be this. I'm going to run Python of hello.py. Now why is that? Well, it turns out that when I actually write code in a language like Python, it's of course stored in that file, hello.py, but I need to interpret the code, top to bottom, left to right, so that the computer knows what to do.
I'm in a weird directory.
If you don't really know much about computers, you've probably heard that computers only understand zeros and one, the so-called binary system. Well, if that's the case, then
So do I need to... Oops. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. go to how do I get to my desktop? Would it be my OneDrive? There it is. Okay, so cd does. Hold on, let me. Not sure. I'm not very good at Windows command line here. Let's change that. Okay, now if I do, there it is. Okay. Just took me a minute. We got it figured out.
Thing that says prints and parenthesis and quote unquote hello world is not surely zeros and ones. We have to somehow translate it into the zeros and ones that the computer understands. Now, fortunately, so long as you've installed such a program in advance, there's a program as well as
zeros and ones is.
So Python is not only a language in which we're going to write
starts
code,
with an A.
it's also a program, otherwise known as an interpreter, that you install for free on your own Mac or PC or some server in the cloud, and you can then run that program, that interpreter, passing to it as input the name of your file, like mine here, hello.py, and then that program, that interpreter, will handle the process of reading it top to bottom, left to right, and translating it effectively into those zeros and ones that the computer can understand. So let's do just that. Let me go back to VS Code here. I already typed out Python of hello.py, but I didn't yet hit enter. And that's what's now going to kick off this command. And hopefully, if I didn't mess any of this up, I should see my very first program's output to the screen. And voila, hello world. So if you too have typed exactly that same code and have executed exactly that same command, you will have written your very first program, in this case, in Python. Well, now let's take a step back and consider what is it that we actually just did, and what is it we're looking here on the screen? Well, first and foremost, in most any programming language, you tend to have access to what are called functions. A function is like an action or a verb that lets you do something in the program. And generally speaking, any language comes with some predetermined set of functions, some very basic actions or verbs that the computer will already know how to do for you, that the language really will know how to do for you, and you, the programmer, the human, can use those functions at will to get the computer to do those things. Now, the program in question here, hello.py, is using one function. And you can perhaps guess what it is. That function is, of course, going to be this function print. And that print function, of course, doesn't print some preordained string of text. That is to say, it prints whatever it is you want it to print. And here, too, we have another piece of terminology in the world of programming, namely arguments. An argument is an input to a function that somehow influences its behavior.
So it's the
people
hello
who
world?
invented Python, of course, didn't necessarily know what it is you and I are going to want to print to the screen, so they designed this print function using these parentheses with the ability to take as input some string of text, be it in English or any other human language, that
or
is
gibberish.
what you want this function ultimately to print onto the screen. And what is it that the program's ultimately doing on the screen? Well, it's printing, of course. It's showing us hello world on the screen, and that's generally in programming known as a side effect. It can be visual, it can be audio. In this case, it's something that appears on the screen, and functions, therefore, can indeed have these side effects. One of the things they can do as this verb or action is to display on the screen as a side effect something like those words that we wanted, hello world. So that's my first program, and I'm feeling pretty good. Everything worked as planned. I didn't make any mistakes, but honestly, when you're learning how to program, and even once you've learned how to program years later, you're going to make mistakes. And those mistakes, of course, are referred to a term you might already know, which is that of a bug. A bug is a mistake in a program, and they can take so many forms. And take comfort, perhaps, in knowing that over the coming weeks, you're going to make so many mistakes. You're
Not me.
So many bugs in your code, just like I did.
It's going to be perfect. My code's going to be perfect.
Those bugs themselves are just mistakes that are problems for you to solve. And over the weeks to come, we're going to give you a lot of tools, both mental and technical, via which you can solve those problems. But just don't get discouraged if when writing your program for the first time, it doesn't even work that first time. It will, with time, with practice, and with experience. So let me deliberately now make a mistake that there was a non-zero chance I might have done accidentally already, but I got lucky. Let me go ahead and just suppose I forgot to include something like the closing parenthesis at the end of this line of code. The code is almost correct. It's like 99% of the way there, but now that I've pointed it out, it's pretty obvious that it's missing that closed parenthesis. But even little, seemingly minor details like that you and I as humans wouldn't really care about, and if you're sending an email or a text message, whatever, it's just a typo, it's not that big a deal. It is going to be a big deal to the computer. A computer is going to take you literally, and if you don't finish your thought in the way the language expects, it's not going to necessarily run at all. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead here and clear my screen down at the bottom, just so I can start fresh. And I'm going to go ahead and run this version of my program after having made that change by deleting the parenthesis. I'm going to go ahead and type Python again of hello.py, and this time when I hit enter, I'm hoping I'm going to see hello world, but here we have an error on the screen, a so-called syntax error.
Oh, you never want to see those syntax errors.
My having made a mistake at my keyboard. And this one, fortunately, is pretty straightforward. It indeed says that this open parenthesis was never closed, and so that's probably pretty intuitive now what I need to do. I need, of course, to close it. Unfortunately,
notice this turned like an orangish red, too.
Not going to be nearly that user-friendly, but there, too, again, with experience, with practice, will you get better at debugging such programs. Let me now make sure that I indeed fixed it correctly. Let me go ahead and run now hello.py and hit enter, and voila, we're back in business. Well, let me pause here and see if we have any questions now about Python itself, writing or running even the simplest of these programs.
So far, pretty good.
Write code inside a Word or, for example, Microsoft Excel, and what's the barrier to doing that?
A really good question, and allow me to very explicitly say to the entire internet that you should not write code with Microsoft Word. I mention that only because it's a tool by which you can write text, and code is at the end of the day just text, but it's not the right tool for the job. We don't need bold-facing, underlining, paragraphs, and the like. We generally want something much simpler than Microsoft Word or Google Docs.
It's going to get real ugly real fast.
It's an example of just a more general-purpose text editor. Its purpose in life is to allow you, the human, to edit text. Nowadays, these text editors come with many more features. In fact, you'll notice that even in my code here, even though it's just one line, there's a bit of color to it. The word print, for me, is appearing in blue. The parentheses are black. And we'll see, as we might write more lines of code, more and more of the lines will come to life in various colors. Now, that's just one feature of a text editor. We'll see, too, that it has features like this built-in terminal window. It's going to have a built-in tool for debugging or finding problems with code. And it's just a very popular tool nowadays. But there are many, many others out there. You're welcome to use them for this course and beyond. We just happen to use this one in large part, too, because you can also use VS Code nowadays for free in the cloud. How about one other question here on programming with Python or Hello World or syntax more generally?
I was trying to ask if it is not possible to run the code without using the terminal window.
I think I heard, is it not, if it's possible to run the program without the terminal window?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you froze for me again, but let me infer what the question is. So
is this like live?
I've configured my computer. I can only run these
obviously
Python
not now,
programs
but
via
was this
the
recorded
terminal
live?
window. Now, that's good for me, the programmer, or the person who's trying to learn how to program, but it's not very good if you want to ship this software and have other people use your actual code. You can absolutely write programs and then allow other people to use not a command line interface, but a graphical user interface, or GUI, G-U-I. This is just one mechanism, and perhaps I think the best one with which to start writing code, because eventually it's going to give us a lot more control. allow me to forge ahead here, but please feel free to continue asking questions along the way, if only via the chat. Let's consider now how we might go about improving this program. Let's go about improving this program to make it a little more interactive and not just assume that everyone is going to want to be greeted more generically as hello world. Let's see if I can't get this program to say something like hello David, or hello Jeremiah, or hello Horatio, or whatever the actual user's name is. Well, to do this, I'm going to go back up to hello.py, and I'm going to add another line of code at the very top that simply says, for instance, what's your name, quote unquote, with an extra space at the end. So I'm printing to the user, asking them a question for some input, but now I need another function to actually get input
you know,
from the user.
we gotta do like a
Currently,
input.
Python comes with a function named input. So here I'm going to go ahead and call a function input, open paren, close paren. And that's going to prompt the user with just a blinking cursor waiting for them to type something in.
Oops.
Now it turns out if I read the documentation for the input function, it actually takes an argument itself. I don't need to use print separately and then prompt the user for input, so I can actually simplify this code before we even use it. I'm going to go ahead here and take that same string from print, put it as an argument to the input function, and get rid of the print altogether. And in fact, that print would have added a new line anyway, so now I've just got a prompt where the user's cursor is going to end up blinking at the end of the line, asking them, what's your name? In my terminal window, I'm going to run Python of hello.py, enter. Okay, we're making progress. It seems that this new function input is indeed prompting me, the human, for input, so I'm going to type in my name,
It did
David,
not.
and hit enter. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do anything with my name. It just outputs it immediately. All right, well, I could fix this, right? I could go up to line 2, and I could change world to David. And then back in my terminal window here, I can do Python of hello.py, enter. What's your name? David, enter. And there we go. All right, now I'm up and running. Now my program is working
Oh, you
as
spelled
intended.
Python.
Of course, this isn't really working as intended here. Let me go ahead and try pretending to be my colleague Carter here. Well, Carter's name is this. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and I'll see, of course, hello.
Okay, hold on. Input. Okay, so when I actually run it, oh yeah, cause I get it. He's getting to the point where we have to make it so that actually inputs changes that. So we'll have to do like name equals whatever. Yeah, okay, I get it now. How the heck do I save this so that it? Now if I do okay, got it. Okay, now I'm back on the same page.
Carter? Well, obviously not, because I've hard-coded, so to speak. I've written literally my name inside of the string. So we need some way now of actually getting back what the user's input is and doing something with it ultimately. And for this, we're going to leverage another feature of programming, specifically a feature of some functions, which is that they can have return values as well. If you think of input as being, again, this action, this verb, you can actually personify it as maybe a person, like a friend of yours that you've asked a question of, and you've asked your friend to go get input from someone else, go ask that person their name. And if your friend comes back knowing that person's name, well, wouldn't it be nice if they handed that name back to you? That's kind of what we need metaphorically the function to do, is get the user's input and then hand it back to me so that I, the programmer, can do something with it. But if it's going to be handed back to me, I kind of want to put it somewhere so that I can then print it back on the screen. I need to do the equivalent of take out like a piece of paper or a Post-it note, write down on this piece of paper what it is the human has said so that I can then feed it into as input that print function. And to do that, we're going to need one more feature of programming, namely variables. And odds are most everyone's familiar with variables from math class way back when, X and Y and Z. Well, programming has that same capability, this ability to create a variable, in this case in the computer's memory, not just on a
And you know, that's a funny thing that he brings that up. So that I had to take a couple math classes for my degree. Not a lot, because I was an IT student, not a computer science major. But I'm like, why do I have to take this math? But then after I took the math classes before I took the scripting class, I'm like, oh, I see. Because it kind of has the same feel. Because, if you don't, a math equation, the answer greatly depends upon the equation. If you just simply change the equation just a little bit, it will change the answer. And you get kind of the same thing with coding, or you change it too much and you get the syntax error.
Or a value, a number, some text, even an image or video or more. A variable is just a container for some variable. A variable is just a container for some value inside of a computer or inside of your own program. So how do I go about expressing myself in this way? Well, I think what I'm going to do is introduce a variable that's a little more interestingly named than x or y. I could just say this, x equals
Let's do
input,
name equals.
but I'm going to use a better name than a typical mathematical variable here, and I'm going to literally call my variable name. Why? Well, in programming, because I have a whole keyboard in front of me, I can use more descriptive terms to describe what it is I'm writing. And now, though, there's an opportunity to consider a specific.
And then we have to change the word to the variable name.
To a function, but this equal sign here, that's in between input on the right and name on the left, is actually important. And it's technically not an equal sign per se. It doesn't mean equality as much as it means assignment. So in Python and many programming languages, a single equal sign is the assignment operator. And what that means specifically is that you want to assign from right to left whatever the user's input is. So the equal sign copies from the right to the left whatever the return value of the function on the right is. So again, the input function clearly gets input from the user. That's why I was able to type my name or Carter's. But it also sort of behind the scenes hands that value, that return value, back to me, the programmer. And if I use an equal sign and a variable, no matter what I call it, I can store that input in that variable so as to reuse it later. So now sitting in the computer's memory somewhere is a container containing David, quote unquote, or Carter, quote unquote, or whatever the human has typed in. But here it's easy to make a mistake. Suppose I decide to try to print that name, and so I kind of, on a hunch, type in this, hello, comma, name. Just kind of plugging in the name of the variable.
Is it the slash? I'm trying to remember.
Hit enter. That's going to prompt me for my name, and let me type in my name, D-A-V-I-D.
I feel like you have to do like a slash.
And perhaps via the chat, what's going to happen here when I now hit enter?
I'm just going to say, it's going to print hello name.
Hello, David. I'd be okay if it says hello, world, but I don't want it to say what it's actually going to say, and yep, what we're seeing in the chat is, well, it's probably going to say literally hello, comma, name. So that's not quite right. So we need another way of printing out the value inside of that variable rather than just this word name.
/ Come on, prove me right.
Let me try this as follows. Let me go ahead and maybe undo this because I've gotten pretty good already at saying hello. So let's draw that line in the sand and just say, all right, let's at least get hello, comma, out the door. Let's now print name, and just on a hunch, I'm going to try this. I'm going to use print again because you can use these functions as many times as you need, and I'm going to pass to the name, to the print function, the variable called name. But notice, I'm being a little clever now. I'm not putting it in double quotes because we've seen already that double quotes means literally print out N-A-M-E. I'm getting rid of the quotes this time in hopes that now by passing the variable called name to the function called print, it will in fact go about printing the contents of that variable, that is, its so-called value. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and do this here. Python of hello.py, enter. What's your name? David. And now, crossing my fingers still, I see hello, comma, David. All right, so it's not the best program. I'm kind of cutting some corners here, so to speak. I'm saying hello, David.
Hey, you get what you pay for, right?
It's not as elegant, it's not as pretty, it's not as grammatically appropriate in English as just saying it all in one breath on one line, but at least I've solved the problem, just not very well yet. But let me take a step back now and perhaps introduce a couple of other concepts with which we should be familiar, which is as our programs get longer and they're no longer just one line or two or even three, Eventually, our programs are going to become dozens of lines, maybe even hundreds of lines long. Let's set the stage for success moving forward.
Oh,
It's
hashtag
Python,
comment.
and a lot of programming languages also support something called comments. Comments are notes to yourself in your code. And you include comments by way of a special symbol. In Python, it's going to be the hash symbol, typically. And that allows you to write the equivalent of a note to yourself, but in a way that's not going to break your code. The computer actually ignores your comments. It's just there for you. It's just there for
Everyone
your teacher.
ignores
It's
my
just there for your
comments.
colleague
Why
who's
should the
doing your
computer be any
script
different?
that code. So if I go back to VS Code here, and I just want to add some comments to this program to explain to my teacher, to myself, to my colleagues what this program is doing, well, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go at the very top of my program, and on line 1 now, I'm going to move that original line of code down a bit.
Bash.
I'm going to add a hash, and I'm going to say something like this, ask user for their name. Now, I don't have to use that language. I don't have to use that text. I can use any human language whatsoever. It doesn't have to be English. But I'm going to now, below that, just say something like this, say hello to user. And you'll notice that VS Code by default is kind of graying out my comments. They're no longer blue. There's no red. There's no color.
Mine's green. Mine's way more colorful.
And the computer ultimately is going to ignore them. But what we have now is 2 comments, ask user for their name, and then a second comment, say hello to user. And I've just kind of commented each chunk of code, like each line or lines plural of code that are doing something noteworthy. Why? Well, tomorrow morning when I wake up, slept for quite some time, forgotten what it is I did the previous day, it's convenient with comments to just see in English or your own human language what it is this program is doing, so that you don't have to read the code itself. And better yet, if there's maybe a mistake down the road, you can read what your intention was, and then you can look at the code and figure out if your code's now doing what you intended. So this isn't really necessary for a program this small. It's pretty obvious with just 1 or 2 or 3 lines what the program's doing. It's just as fast to read the code than the comments. But getting into this habit is generally a good thing, to comment your code every 1 or few lines so as to remind yourself and others what it is your intent and your code is doing. What's nice about comments too is this. Comments can also serve to be sort of a to-do list for yourself.
Okay, hold on. Stop. So pseudocode is basically writing what you want the code to do in just normal English. So, like, if I want to create a calculator, I would be like, input number plus my button. I don't know how to explain, but it's basically writing the code in normal English so that you could just kind of read it and follow along with it. It's basically a blueprint. You would do it as a blueprint to create whatever you're creating. He's gonna say it a lot better than I did. I promise.
It's not one specific language. It's just using English or your own human language to express your thoughts succinctly, methodically, algorithmically, so to speak. But pseudocode, therefore, because it's not Python and it's not necessarily English, it just kind of allows you to outline your program even in advance. So for instance, if I wasn't sure today how I wanted to go about writing this program, but I didn't know what I want to do, I could have started today by just writing this in hello.py. No code. I could have written just a couple of comments to myself. Step 1, ask user for their name. Step 2, say hello to user. Then, once I've outlined my program in pseudocode, then I can go in there and say, all right, how do I ask the user for their name? Well, I can do input, quote unquote, what's your name, question mark. And then on the left here, I can maybe put a variable and assign it to that. Okay, how do I say hello to the user? Well, I know I can use print to say things on the screen. Let me say hello, comma, and let me now print the person's name. So again, pseudocode is a nice way of structuring your to-do list, especially if you have no idea how to write the code, because it breaks a bigger program down into small, bite-sized tasks. All right, let me pause here to see if there are now any questions on comments, pseudocode, return values, or variables.
Just kidding.
Any questions we can clear up here?
Yeah, my question is, does the function input work for any type of information or only for words?
Yeah, really good question. So according to its
You can
documentation, and we'll look more
input
at formal documentation soon,
integers.
input is going to expect what's called a string. That is a sequence of text, be it in English or any other human language, but it's indeed going to be expecting text with which to prompt the user.
Oh, you have to do like the
Another question from the group, if
like
you could.
integers
I
and
want
stuff
to ask
separate.
how I make several line comments.
Oh, how do you do many lines of comments, if I'm hearing you
Yes.
correctly? Sure, you would just keep doing them like this. You just prefix each of the lines with a hash symbol, like I'm doing here. There is another technique for doing multi-line comments in Python that actually tend to have special meaning. You can do 3 double quotes like this, and then anything in between here is a comment. That's another technique, or you
Oh, I
can use
didn't know
single
that.
quotes as well, but more on those, I think, another time. All right, well, if you don't mind, let me forge ahead here and see how we might improve this program further, and also introduce a few other features that we might want to take into account over time. So it turns out that we can certainly improve on this program because it's a little disappointing that I'm cutting this corner and saying hello, comma, and then on a new line, printing out name. Like, we can do better, and most programs you use on your phone or your laptop certainly keep text together when people want. So how can we go about doing that? Well, there's a few different ways, and in fact, the goal here is not so much to solve this one problem, but to demonstrate and emphasize that in programming, Python and other languages, there's so many ways sometimes to solve the same problem. And here's one way to solve this problem. Let me go in here, and let me go ahead now and say hello, comma, and let me just add to the end of that the user's name.
Plus
So I'm
sign.
using plus
I forgot
in an
about
interesting
that.
way. This is not addition per se. I'm not adding numbers, obviously, but I do kind of want to add
do
the
it on
person's
the
name
outside.
to the string of text, hello, comma. Well, let me go now down to my terminal window and run Python of hello.py again. Enter. What's your name? I'm going to type in David. Enter.
Oh,
Okay, it's better. It's better, but there's a minor bug, albeit aesthetic here. There's missing space, but let's just use some intuition here. Well, if I'm missing the space after the comma, why don't I go ahead and just add it manually here? Let me now rerun the program, Python of hello.py, enter, David, enter, and there we go. Now we have something that looks a little prettier in terms of English grammar, hello, comma, space, David. And now if we rewind, you might have noticed before or wondered why I had this seemingly extra space after my question mark, namely here. There's a space after the question mark before the double quote, and that was just for aesthetics too. I wanted to move the user's cursor one space to the right so that when I type their name,
okay,
or
is that
they
why you
type
did
their
that?
name, it's not immediately next to that same question mark there. But there's other ways we can do this. It turns out that some functions, print among them, actually take multiple arguments. And it turns out that if you separate the inputs to a function, the so-called arguments to a function with a comma, you can pass in not just 1, but 2, 3, 4, 5, onward. So let me go ahead and pass in not just hello, comma, space, but that followed by name. And this is a little confusing potentially at first glance, because now I've got 2 commas, but it's important to note that the first comma is inside of my quotation marks, which is simply an English grammatical thing. The second comma here is outside of the quotes, but between what are now 2 separate arguments to print. The first argument is hello, comma, space. The second
now I got
argument
2
is
spaces
the
down
name
there, so
variable
I'd have to
itself.
take.
So let's see how this looks. Python of hello.py, enter. What's your name? David, enter. Okay, I've kind of overcorrected. Now I've got 2 spaces
Yep,
for some
okay.
reason. Well, it turns out, and this is subtle, when you pass
He's getting there.
multiple arguments to print, it automatically inserts a space for you. This was not relevant earlier because I was passing in one big argument to print all at once by using that plus operator. This time I'm passing in 2 because of the comma, so if I don't want that extra space, I don't need to pass in one myself. I can just do this, and now notice if I run this program again, Python of hello.py, type in my name David, now it looks grammatically like I might want. Now, which of these approaches is better? This approach uses a
Cool.
function print with 2 arguments, hello, comma, and the name variable. The previous version, recall, technically used 1 argument, even though it looked a little curious. It's 1 argument in the sense that the computer, just like mathematicians, are going to do what's inside of parentheses first. So if inside of parentheses you have this string of text, hello, comma.
And like I said, going back to when I was taking my math class, a lot of the things you do to solve math problems relate to coding. So it just kind of blew my mind when I made the connection. Maybe most people just automatically make that connection, but I did. It took me a minute for me to make that connection. So I thought school was just punishing me for having to do like pre-calculus and crap.
And a space, which I need to add back. Then you have a plus, which means not addition per se, but concatenation, to join the thing on the left and the thing on the right. This ultimately becomes the English phrase, hello, comma, space, David. And then what's being passed ultimately to the function is technically something like this. But it's doing it all dynamically. It's not me typing in David as I discreetly did earlier. It's figuring out dynamically what that value is.
You should come over here. You can be on camera over here better.
The value of name, and then passing that ultimately to print as the sole argument. Let me pause here to see if there's any questions on numbers of arguments now to functions.
Can we use a function many times to solve a certain problem which we can encounter many times in our code?
You can use a function many different times to solve some problem. What we'll soon see, though, is if you find yourself as the programmer solving a problem the same way again and again and again, it turns out you'll be able to make your own function so that you don't have to keep reusing the basic ones that come with the language.
I was curious about the comma and the plus sign. So after plus sign, can we give just one variable, and after comma, can we give multiple variables? Like, what is the difference?
A good question. So in the context of strings, and I keep using that term, string is a technical term in a programming language, and again, it means a sequence of text, a character, a word, a whole paragraph even. So the plus operator is not just used, as we'll see, for addition of numbers in Python like we do on paper pencil, but it also is used for concatenation of strings on the left and the right. If you did want to combine not just two strings, left and right, but a third and a fourth, you can absolutely keep using plus, 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 and chain them together just like in math. Eventually, that's going to start to look a little ugly, I dare say, especially if you're
ugly code.
So there's better ways that we'll actually soon see. A good question as well. Well, let me come back to the code here in question and see if we can show you just a couple of other ways to solve the same problem, along the way emphasizing that what we're technically talking about here, yes, are strings, but there's even a technical term for these strings. In Python, it's just str, so to speak. STR for short for string. As you may know, if you programmed in other languages, people who invent programming languages like to be very succinct.
Charvar is my favorite.
So we tend to use fairly short phrases to describe things, not necessarily full words. So while you might say string,
it's just fun to say Charvar.
What we're really talking about, these sequences of text, are technically strs. This is an actual type of data in a program.
I don't remember if we used Charvar in Python. That might have been more of a SQL thing.
That there's other types of data in programs as well. In fact, let's see if we can't improve this in one other way. I like the progress we've made by keeping everything on the same line. Hello, comma, David. All on the same line. What more, though, could we do in terms of solving this problem?
What more can they do, Apollo?
That we didn't have to give up entirely with using print twice.
Mosquito.
Let me rewind a little bit and go back to that earlier version where I wasn't really sure how to solve this problem. So I was using print once to print out just the hello and the space and the comma, and then I used print again to print name. That, strictly speaking, wasn't bad, but there was this visual side effect that I just didn't like. It just looked ugly to have these two lines of text separate from one another. But there's another way to fix this. Clearly, it seems to be the case that the print function is automatically outputting a blank line. It's moving the cursor automatically for me to the next line.
Oh,
that's why I'm seeing hello on one line and David on the next, and then my prompt, the $sign, on the line below that. So print seems to be presuming automatically that you want it to move the cursor to the next.
Yeah, there's a way of making it so that it follows the previous line.
Next line after you pass.
I don't remember what it is, but he's about ready to tell us.
It's some argument. But you can override that behavior. Again, functions take arguments, which influence their behavior. We just have to know what those arguments are. And it turns out that if we look at the documentation for Python's print function, we can actually look up at this URL here, docs.python.org is where all of Python's official documentation lies. If I poke around, I can find my way to more specifically this URL here, where I can find all of the available functions in Python and the documentation therefore. And if I go a little more precisely, I can even find specific documentation for the print function itself. And rather than pull that up in a browser, I'm going to go ahead and highlight just one line from that same URL, which is this. And this is easily the most cryptic thing we've seen
Dash
yet.
the
But this is the
slash
official
n.
documentation for the print function. And one of the best things you can do when learning a programming language is honestly
I was
learn
thinking
to read the
there was a
documentation,
forward
because
slash that did
truly
something
all
too,
of the
though.
answers to your questions will in some way be there, even though admittedly it's not always.
So we have print objects. Sep. Is Sep going to be September? Are we like printing a... But I was going to say flesh equals false, so we have some boolean in there. That's another fun one. Charvar and boolean.
Always obvious. And I will say too, Python's documentation isn't necessarily the easiest thing, especially for a first time or a novice programmer. It too just takes practice, so try not to get overwhelmed if you're not sure what you're looking at. So let me walk you through this example. This again is a line of text from Python's official documentation for the print function. What this indicates as follows is this. The name of this function is of course print. Then there's a parenthesis over here and another closed parenthesis way over there. Everything inside of those parentheses are the arguments, the potential arguments to the function. However, when we're looking at these arguments in the documentation like this, there's technically a different term that we would use. These are technically the parameters to the function. So when you're talking about what you can pass to a function and what those inputs are called, those are parameters. When you actually use the function and pass in values inside of those parentheses, those inputs, those values are arguments. So we're talking about the exact same thing. Parameters and arguments are effectively the same thing, but they're terms you use from looking at the problem from different directions. When we're looking at what the function can take versus what you're actually passing into the function. So what does this imply? Well, this syntax is pretty cryptic, but at the moment, just know that an asterisk, a star, and then the word
It's a
objects
file, right?
means that the print function can take any number of objects. You
Oh,
can pass in 0
way
strings
off.
of text, 1 string like I did, 2 strings like I did, or technically infinitely many if you really want, though that code's not going to look very good. After that, we see a comma. Then we see another parameter here called sep, short for separator in English.
Separator,
And
that was
notice the
way
equal
off.
sign and the single quote, space, single quote. So quote unquote space. I don't know what that is yet, but I think we've seen a hint about it. Let's focus though for a moment on this. The print
So is this like maybe so it looks like it. So is this like a syslog thing or something that can be inputted into Python, and basically after the space would indicate that it's the end of the line? Is that what it is?
function takes another parameter called
I
end.
feel like we're getting in some SQL and some Python together, but I could be very wrong. Things are blurring because both these classes were a long time ago.
And the default value of that parameter is apparently, based on this equal sign and these quotes, \n. And what is \n if you'd like to chime in the chat? Anyone who's programmed
It
before.
doesn't
probably
go to the
seen this,
next
so
line.
If you've never programmed before, this might look quite cryptic. \n means new line.
New-
And it's a
I
way
got it
textually
backwards.
of indicating if and when you want the computer effectively to move the cursor to the next line, create a new line of text. And so technically, if we read into the documentation, we'll see more detail on this. The fact that there's a parameter called end in the documentation for the print function just means that by default, this print function is going to end every line with \n. You don't literally see \n, you see a new line, you see the cursor moving to the next line. Now, by that logic, let's move backwards. Sep for separator. The default value of
Is a
separator
space.
is apparently a single blank space. Well, where have we seen that? Well, recall in an earlier example when I passed in not just one, but 2 arguments to the print function, recall that they magically had a space between them. In fact, they had that space plus my own space, and that's why I deleted my space, because at that point it was extra.
My
So
space.
this just means that when you pass multiple arguments to print, by default they're going to be separated by a single space. By default, when you pass arguments to print, it's the whole thing is going to be ended with a new line. Now, just by knowing this, and let me literally wave my hand at the rest of the documentation for another day. There's more things that print can do, but we're going to focus just on sep and on end. Let's see if we can't leverage this now to solve that original problem. The original problem was this. I don't like how hello, comma, David is on 2 different lines. Well, that's happening again because print is automatically printing out a new line, so let's tell it not to do that. Let's tell it by passing a second argument to the first use of...
Oh, I got caught up here for a second. So we got rid of this. And then we have the print name. So now we are...
print to say end equals quote unquote, not \n, which is the default automatically. Let's make it quote unquote nothing else. Let's override the default value so there is no new line. There's literally nothing there. And let's see what happens. Let me now go down to my terminal window and clear it. And I'm going to run Python of hello.py enter. I'm going to type in my name David, and I think now everything's going to stay on the same line.
Seems
because,
like it,
and it did, this line...
Seems like the hard way of doing it. But I get it. I get...
Here, 5 is going to print out hello, comma, space, but then nothing at the end of it, because I changed it to be quote unquote. The second line is going to print the name, David, or whatever the human's name is, and it will move the cursor to the next line because I didn't override the value of end there. Just to see this more explicitly, if you do something cryptic like, well, I have no idea what's going on, let me just put in temporarily 3 question marks here, we'll see the results of this too. Let me go back down to my terminal window, run python of hello.py, what's your name, David, and now you see literally really ugly output, but you see literally what's going on. Hello, comma, space, then 3 question marks, end that print statement, and then you see DAV ID. So not a good outcome, but it demonstrates just how much control
See, to me, this doesn't... So it's printing hello with the space and equals... Is it because it is... Is it because Python is reading basically what's in parentheses before it's reading end? So like in a, say in a math equation, you have the order of operations. Is the order of operations the quotation mark? And then it goes to end. Let's see if he says it. By the way, I wanted to basically watch till the end of this segment and then call it a night. I am falling asleep over here. Not because this dude is great. This dude is high energy and awesome. But it's way past my bedtime.
Have here too. And let me rewind further. Recall that in our other version of this, when I passed in hello, comma, and name, they were separated by a single space. So python of hello.py, DAVID, enter, that just worked. Well, what if we override the value of sep for separator? Instead of being 1 space, we could say something like question mark, question mark, question mark.
So we got rid of this, and we did name, and then we did separator equals. So is it going to print off? Because I would think it's going to be hello question mark question mark question mark name, and then the input name. That's how I'm predicting it.
Just to wrap our minds around what's going on there. Let me now do python of hello.py, DAVID, enter, and you see 2. These 2 inputs,
okay.
Hello, comma, and the name are now separated in an ugly way by 3 question marks because I've overridden the default behavior of sep. And even though the documentation uses single quotes, I've been in the habit of using double quotes. In Python, you can use either. Strictly speaking, it doesn't matter, but you should be consistent, and I generally always use double quotes. Python's documentation, though, always uses single quotes. Questions now on these types of parameters. And allow me to propose that we give these an official name. Up until now, when we've been passing
parameters. All right, that's going to be it for me today. We got to give... Oops. Oh, the buttons on the side of my mouse does forward and back. I did not know that. So yeah, it's been a good little refresher so far. I'm gonna have to search here before we go real quick. In Python, is there an order of operations such as the code does what is in the such as when there is a print. What do we call the print? Was that a function? Function. There is a print function. Does it print is in before it does something like and or set? And yes, Python does follow a specific order of operations when evaluating a print function call. Let's break it down so it's crystal clear. Okay, Python evaluates the argument in this order. Hello, world, are evaluated and converted to string if needed. Apply the set parameter. The set parameter is inserted between the positional arguments. Result, hello, world. Oh, so that didn't work how I thought it was going to work. Append the end parameter, the string defined by, and is added to the end of the output. Well, yeah, well, and they have the, okay. So it's printing the dash n because it's within the parentheses, I think. So yes, the stuff inside the quotes get processed first, but the sep and the end parameters modify how those strings are joined and terminated before anything is actually printed. So in that scenario, anytime there is a space, there would be dash dash dash. But the end only prints once because there is only one ending. Exactly right. See, I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if I want it more nuanced. I don't know if my brain can handle nuance. But yeah. So A, B, C, between each one of these separators. So is the separator the comma? Oh, great. So the comma is just Python sent. By default, Python inserts a space in between each argument. Okay, so it is the automatic space that is triggering the sep. Okay. I think I got it now. So in this it says default and has the new line in the end, but I thought up here it was saying it printed it. See, so end. Oh, is it just saying that's the end? Okay, never mind. So it's not actually printing it, it's just doing the, okay. Alright. Now this is what AI is really good for. Yeah, it especially when stuff is, we'll say like the liberal arts side of things, like reading comprehension and psychology, not psychology, ethics. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Basically, things that are based in STEM, based in fact, objective, it does really well with. But things that are subjective, it can kind of struggle and be kind of weird. So, okay, very good. That's going to be it for this one, because I am going to be falling asleep if I sit here any longer. So I hope you go to the link down in the description. Again, I am not affiliated with EDX. They don't want to be affiliated with me, I'm sure. This is a free course you can take through the HarvardX thing, through EDX. They have a whole bunch of different computer science things you can take for free. You just do the lectures, you do the assignments, I guess. We'll find out. I don't know if it's like an instant thing where there's like AI that grades it, or if humanized. I assume since it's free that it's probably AI graded, but if you want like the official thing, maybe somebody like a human goes back and looks at it. I don't know. That's still kind of up in the air. I want to try and stream tomorrow. I don't know if I'll make it. Like I said, I have the kids. They may not let me stream. They may not give me 5 minutes alone, because they like streaming. So if they see me sit down here and start up a stream, they may want to play a video game or something, and they may not let me work. But we're going to try. No promises. Maybe I can tempt them into a couple rounds of Phasmophobia if they give me an hour of peace and quiet or something. Maybe I can make a deal with them. So I hope to be back tomorrow with more of this, but we'll see. I know for a fact, I should say tomorrow and Thursday. I know for a fact I'll be back Friday, barring something crazy happening. And Friday will be probably a couple of long streams. I'll probably do quite a bit of Net Plus, take a break, come back and do quite a bit of this as well. Maybe get a couple of at least a full one knocked out. So again, that's it for this one, peeps. Let me know down below if you're part of the rewatch crew, if you are taking this course, what you think of it, or even if you have taken it. I would like to hear from you. So I hope to see you next time. Cheers. Oh, I had to pause. I'm going to pause a little bit because I noticed last time I didn't pause and it cut off like the last 10 seconds. So I'm going to sit here like awkwardly quiet for a minute.